real man doesn't deliver on a Sunday.
If you don't like that, you don't like NBA basketball.
Anthony for three. Bang! J.R. Smith! We just saw men fly. LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Cleveland! This is for you!
Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. I am Ronan Gaine. Joining me as always, Chris Nambu. We're also joined by old friend of the podcast, Tim Thornquist, to discuss an absolutely insane NBA trade deadline. So much happening. So many players have moved. Major changes. Kevin Durant is a Phoenix Sun. We haven't even started talking about it. We already got to take a breath. We gotta just relax a little bit. Take it all in. We're going to get into it. We're going to cover the major trades out in the East, out in the West. We're going to do it all. But this is our first podcast since LeBron James became the all-time leading scorer in the NBA. My boy did it. It felt underwhelming a little bit because they ended up losing, but an absolutely unbelievable achievement. What he has done, he's broken what was thought to be an unbreakable record. The so-called non-scorer is now the greatest point scorer in the history of the NBA. I think this just solidifies him. I've already said we all know he's my GOAT. Both of you guys, Chris, I'll start with you. Where does this put LeBron James all time? Does it change it for you? Where is he in your ranking?
Honestly, I think we've said this a few times before. Like, I've never liked the GOAT debate because it's so hard to compare eras, so hard to compare players. But what I will say for this is that everyone's got to continue to tip their cap to LeBron for his ability to keep playing at the level that he's at. I mean, he's going to be playing until his son comes into the league, and he's still going to be, at an elite level. The fact that he's still doing as well as he is now, and I thought it was poetic, really, that the Lakers lose that game in the very game where he breaks the record. Of course, that's what happens in a season like this. But I mean, it's always been 1A, 1B for me, for Jordan and LeBron. And I think that's just, it's always going to be like that for me and a lot of other people. But I mean, we're watching the twilight of the greatest, second greatest, third greatest, first greatest, whatever you think, one of the greatest players of all time. And it's hopefully, once we talk about the trade deadline here for the Lakers, it's going to be a more memorable end to his career because he's still doing such crazy things.
And Tim, where are you on that debate?
Well, hats off to the King first and foremost. He's definitely solidified himself as the greatest player of all time. You think about, where Jordan was at when he was 38 years old. He wasn't doing nearly as much as what LeBron is doing at his current age. And, when it's all said and done, he's going to be top 5 in about almost every category that you can think of. And so he's what he's been able to do with his body and keep the longevity going. He's kind of like the Tom Brady of basketball, where he's just defying all the odds and beating Father Time. So hats off to the King. For me, he's the greatest of all time. And obviously Jordan's right there at second, but I'm not going to be like Christian Nambu over here being 1A and 1B. You got to give a definitive response. And for me, it's hats off to the King. He's number one, greatest of all time.
Love that, Tim. I knew I wanted you on this podcast. I love that answer. I always say the same. He's my guy. Mainly the main reason, obviously, unbelievable talent. I always just think he's the guy who made me fall in love with the game, and watching his whole career has just been unbelievable as an all-around complete player. I mean, there's no one better. He's probably the most complete player you've seen. I'd probably say since Larry Bird. All around stats that he produces, points, rebounds, assists. He can do it on the defensive end. He plays hard every night. Like, Larry Bird was the most feared scorer in the NBA right up until about 88, 89. That's when Jordan really took over and Bird kind of started to go down. And LeBron has been like that for, maybe he's not quite the most feared scorer at the moment, but he's still averaging 30. He's still averaging 30 a game. He's had to step up in his last 2 years. He's 37, 38-year-old seasons. He's averaging 30 a game, which is just absolutely insane without really taking away from the assist numbers or anything else like that. What this guy is doing is just unbelievable. I know guys talk about errors. The only thing I say about in the GOAT debate is if you're going to say it's Jordan or Kareem or whoever your guy is, do it by hyping them up. Don't just come at me and be like, oh, LeBron lost 6 finals. That's why he's so much worse than Jordan. Just say Jordan was a better player. Jordan played in 6 finals. He won 6 finals. That's fair enough. It's just everyone always tries to belittle whatever achievements LeBron James makes to like keep him away from Michael Jordan. And I hate that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think there's too much nuance to that too, in terms of like, and that's why I don't like the GOAT debate too, because they're two completely different players. Right? Especially when people come up with the question of like, oh, well, who do you want taking the last shot? Like that doesn't define who is the better player. I think LeBron is a different kind of basketball player than Jordan. Like they approach the game very differently, for better or for worse. And a last shot scenario, obviously you're given to Jordan, but for a whole game, who's helping guys around him be better? I mean, over the course of his career, it's been Jordan. It's been LeBron. I mean, Jordan did it the years where they asked him to, but I think when we think about eras, an interesting way to look at it, because it's always looking backwards instead of forwards. Who even in the league could come close to what LeBron has done over his career? I think that's an interesting way to look at it, because I can't see any one player in this league. I mean, some people might say Luka, but I think at this point in his career, Luka's still not the dominant player that LeBron was early in his career. I mean, Luka's still an amazing player, but I think that just goes to show like how LeBron has been since he came into the league. I mean, him and Kobe until Kobe retired. So the last few years of Kobe's career, it's been LeBron James. And I don't think there's any player, maybe Giannis, you could say, but to come close to what LeBron has done across the board, I don't see anyone doing it.
Yeah.
So are you happy?
Right.
Have we kissed LeBron's ass
like
enough
that.
for you?
I enjoyed that. Yes, thank you. I think
All right.
it's still not
This
enough.
is the trade deadline podcast, right? I don't know. I might have joined the wrong Zoom meeting.
He still deserves more love. The guy, he's the man. Respect to Bron. Amazing record. He's probably going to finish with 40,000 points by the time it's all said and done, which just seems absolutely insane. But yes, this is the trade deadline podcast. So let's get talking trades. The blockbuster went down. The Brooklyn Nets go full rebuild. Kevin Durant is now a member of the Phoenix Suns. Durant and Warren to Phoenix. Jae Crowder, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, 4 unprotected first-round picks are headed to Brooklyn. What does this trade do for the Phoenix Suns?
I think the answer is obvious. Like they're the favorites now, right? I mean, Tim, would you say they're favorites? I feel like that's pretty obvious, right?
I think they're favorites in the West, but I do think the Celtics match up well against them. But obviously we'll talk about that in a little bit. So go on.
Yeah. But I think just looking at it on the floor, you look at a lineup with Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton, what they've been able to do in the pick and roll, what Devin Booker has been able to do off the dribble in the mid-range. Chris Paul as well. They have 2 elite mid-range shooters, and then they added a third, Kevin Durant. They have 3, I'm saying this off the cuff, but I believe it's 3 of the top 5 pull-up mid-range shooters. So good luck defending any pick and roll there. DeAndre Ayton's going to eat. You can't double that because you have 2 of the best ISO scorers in the league, and Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. And like it's a nightmare. I don't think any teams, at least in the West, can match up at all defensively. And defensively too, I think this is a worry that I had, and I'll pose this to you guys. Where do you think they end up on the defensive end? Because I may have a more positive outlook, but do you think they take a step back?
Absolutely take a step back. Their offensive firepower is going to be through the roof, and it's going to be like something we've never seen since maybe the Golden State Warriors days with Kevin Durant. But they shipped off their best defender in Mikal Bridges, and of course they needed to do so. And you're getting Durant, who is a decent defender, but I almost imagine that they're going to take a step back and be middle of the pack type of defense, but their offense is going to likely level it out. But they 100% took a step back on the defensive end.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. I completely agree on that. I mean, you can't trade away a guy like Mikal Bridges and not expect your defense to take a hit And there's going to be a bit of pressure on Durant coming back off this slight injury setback. He was playing at a pretty good level defensively in Brooklyn. Can he sustain that now for the rest of the year and into the playoffs? That's a question mark. You gotta level against him. Then you also take a look at it and think, what way is their defense actually going to work? The way, like, Chris Paul is obviously taking a bit of a step back on the defensive side as well.
Right.
And it's just going to be tough to see how the flow is going to be at like an elite level. Offensively, yeah, absolutely. They're going to be unbelievable. If they're not the number one offense from the moment the trio start playing together to the end of the year, I will be absolutely shocked. But defensively, they're going to take a hit, but you have to think the offense will be so good that no one's even going to be thinking about their defense until maybe we get to playoff time and it's a bit more of a crucial situation.
Yeah, I don't know. Middle of the pack, though, like right now they're 8th. Like, how far you think they'll sink? 20th?
No, 15th.
15th?
That's what I would say. Middle
modest,
of the pack is like 15. So they're going to take a few steps back for sure.
Because I think the metric is they're going to be a top 3 offense. Can they maintain a top 10 defense to really be like a true like championship favorite? And I think it's tough to like look at losing Mikal Bridges and say like, oh, they're going to stay the same. But I mean, Kevin Durant he was going to be on an all defensive team this year. Depending on if him missing games is going to hurt his candidacy for that. But his defense, tremendous in Brooklyn. You're adding that there. And I think in a way that you didn't get with Mikal Bridges, he's a great rim protector. He's not anywhere close to the perimeter defender that Bridges was. But honestly, like the Suns outside of Ayton didn't really have a rim protector. And now they get 2 on the floor with Ayton and Durant there. And I think Torrey Craig, I mean, he's not Mikal Bridges, but he still provides wing defense. I don't know if they're going to start throwing minutes to Okogie. I mean, he's a guy that really didn't belong in Timberwolves because they just needed more offense there, and he just didn't provide that. But maybe there's spare minutes for a guy like him. When you saw guys like Gary Payton Jr. get minutes with the Warriors just because of his defense, because their offense was so gifted. Maybe that's a situation they have here in Phoenix. But I think they have options. Like, they have a way to maintain defense. And I think Devin Booker also doesn't get enough credit for how much he's improved defensively on ball defense. But I think that regardless, no matter how you cut the pie here, I mean, this is the best starting lineup in basketball now. And the words that you said, this is going to be like, I forget what words you used, but it seems oddly reminiscent of when Brooklyn made that trade and we're like, oh, this is going to be one of the greatest offenses in history, blah, blah, blah. So I think we're a little bit more hesitant to make these kind of predictions now.
Well, maybe it'll help if they play more than 16 games together. That'd be a plus if we see that happen. I think hopefully KD comes back fully healthy now after the All-Star break, and then we get to see the real trio. We get to see the real star lineup out there. But at the end of the day, they've gone all in. The Phoenix Suns have gone all in, and obviously it is great to see that. It's great to see teams with that sort of ambition. But you gotta say now the pressure's on them to win. Before they were still kind of the underdog, and like obviously it was still crazy. They got to that NBA Finals, then they had that unbelievable season last year. They lose in 7 games to the Mavericks. There's no excuses now. They've added Kevin Durant. This team is healthy. They have got to win it all. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Do we talk now? Do we switch now to the other trade out of Brooklyn? The Kyrie Irving is now a Dallas Maverick. 2 guys have moved from the East to the West. The West has gotten a bit stronger. 2 teams that needed that, other stars. 2 kind of surprising teams. Maybe not. Phoenix wasn't too surprising. They were the team most touted when KD originally requested a trade before the start of the season. But Kyrie to Dallas, that kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Tim, do you remember when the trade went down for Kyrie to Boston, and the reporting, it was, again, so many similar things happened again. And the tweet was something like, Kyrie ecstatic to be in Boston, looking forward to joining the team. Like, literally copied and pasted for this
Seriously, though.
situation.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Do you think he lasts there? Does he play with the Mavs next season? What
Absolutely
are the
not.
chances?
No, 0%
Okay.
chance.
0%.
It's a complete rental. That's my opinion. I think that he's going to end up in a Lakers uniform next year, and I think that that's where he wants to go, and he's made that clear. And it's going to be LeBron's last few years, or at least last year or so, with the team. And he's had a relationship with Anthony Davis, so I definitely think he angles his way to LA in free agency of next year, as long as LA wants him. But I would say the percentage for him returning to Dallas is as good as 0%.
Yeah,
That's pretty grim percentage. Are
I
you in the
think
same boat?
I think I'm in the same boat. Don't get me
Wow.
wrong. I think he can do a lot for them this year. I think he's going to be a great addition beside Luka. I think offensively, the two of them together are going to be a real dynamic duo. I think he can absolutely do everything Jalen Brunson could do and more.
Yep.
So you look at that and you think that's a great addition. This is a team that got to the Western Conference Finals last year. Defense, of course, going to take a hit losing Dorian Finney-Smith, but you add an offensive piece like Kyrie Irving, you can't say that doesn't tilt games in your favor. They've got now the best first quarter scorer and the third quarter scorer in Luka, and the best fourth quarter scorer in Kyrie Irving on your team. If they can keep games close, you're going to favor the Dallas Mavericks to win any night. It's just a question of how does their defense hold up now, because I love the fit. I think people have kind of described it similarly to what we saw when Kyrie played with LeBron James. Not to say that Luka is exactly the same as LeBron James, but he's a similar sort of type of player. He is quite ball dominant. Kyrie will be able to play off him. They are going to work well together. People are trying to say, oh, no, it's two the same player. They're not going to be able to work well at all. That's just not true. Kyrie Irving, I think, has made himself the best second star of this era. You could argue he's right up there in the top 2 or 3 in terms of the number 2 guy, and Luka is an elite level number 1. So I don't see how it can't at least be exciting, even if it is only for a few months and one playoff run.
If it's one playoff run, then what's their ceiling? You got Luka, Kyrie, Reggie Bullock. If he's playing like he did the other night, it's a pretty good sign. Maxi Kleber, hopefully he's healthy. Powell, Christian Wood. They're still sorting things out, but with the talent they have in this roster, what's the ceiling here?
And I'll go on that one. I guess you have to say it's the NBA Finals because they got to the Western Conference Finals last year. But after the trade the Phoenix have just made, the strength of some of the other teams in the Western Conference, I just don't think the defense will be able to hold up enough, and I still feel like their ceiling probably is the Western Conference Finals, but they caused surprises last year, and they can absolutely do that again this year.
Yeah, no, a great point. I think their ceiling is the Western Conference Finals. I don't think that they're going to get over the hump to the finals, and I think the NBA would love to see a Western Conference Finals, Phoenix versus Dallas, KD versus Kyrie, and get a rematch of last year's playoff just with 2 star caliber players inserted on each team. And so I don't believe that Dallas will get over the hump and get to the finals. So that's why I say that their ceiling is the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, it's just it's tough now that we have to gauge like how much better these other teams have gotten. But I do think about the run that they made, and you think about how they're just like a couple runs away from trying to win some of these games against the Warriors. And when it comes down to those moments, you have a guy like Kyrie Irving, and that becomes a little bit more possible. You're not relying on Jalen Brunson to continue to push beyond what he normally does. You're expecting a guy like Kyrie Irving to play like the star that you know him to be, and Luka to continue to grow. And he's going to really benefit the most. I think the biggest part about this trade is allowing Luka Doncic to just take a breather. Like, he doesn't have to hold it down for this team all season long. He can rely on Kyrie Irving to take it up in some of those moments. But at the end of the day, this is the move that the kind of move that the Dallas Mavericks have been pushed to make, and they made it regardless of whether it works next season. I mean, they took a big risk, and if it works out this in the postseason, maybe he does stay. I don't think it's 0, because it will be complicated for Kyrie to find his way onto the Lakers with like a contract extension, like he's going to get the most money with the Mavericks at this point. And to do it alongside a star like Luka, if they can gel, that gives him a chance. I don't think it's said and done.
Yeah, the
So
money is where
what's
it's
the
going to come down
percentage?
to. The money is where it's going to come down to. That's real. The
Percentage,
Lakers aren't going to pay him.
50-50. I think it's a 50-50.
That's
because
high. That's high. That dude is a flight risk.
It's pretty low when you basically jettisoned all your final assets, but I'd say it just comes down to the fact he's going to get the most money, like Ronan said, and it comes down to the fact that I think he will find success with the Mavericks.
Yeah, I think that's fair. What do? We got it. We have to talk about the Nets side of things, though, don't we? The Nets have failed once again. I mean, the Nets have got to be the worst run franchise in basketball, if not the worst run franchise in sports. It started with Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. That was a horrendous decision. They traded a lot of assets for two players that were past their best. That was a massive failure. Then they actually go through drafting. They get young pieces and they have a great year. What was that? 2017, 2018. They got back to playoffs. Obviously, D'Lo announced himself to the world. Jarrett Allen was that young hot piece. They had a great team that year. Then they managed to strike gold again and they signed Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in free agency. Then they go and add James Harden to that. They trade away a whole load of picks. They do all that. The trio plays 16 games together. They get a playoff run. Guys go down, toe on the line. They end up going down in 7 games to the Milwaukee Bucks. Then James Harden requests a trade. He's gone to the 76ers. Then Kevin Durant requests a trade. He stays around for a while. Then Kyrie Irving requests a trade. And then Kevin Durant is gone. There's just something innately wrong with this Brooklyn Nets franchise. They've swung for the fences once, failed. They swung again when they added Harden. They failed. They cannot seem to keep the stars happy within them. They have to stop trying to skip over the trials and tribulations of creating a winning team. They've got to now try and actually build a team naturally through the draft and with small maneuvers. They've got to do it. The Nets are they're just awful.
That spoken like a true Knicks fan.
Yeah, I'm not wrong.
Get out of here. Get out of here. You guys would have taken all of that a million times out of a million. You would have taken Kyrie and Durant and Kawhi and anyway, you would have traded all of your firstborn children for the opportunity to do what the Nets did. And what so would most of the league.
I know that I would have done that. I'm just saying the Knicks probably would have fucked it up as well, but I'm saying they ended up completely messing it up. They struck gold, but they completely failed. They swung for the fences with that Garnett Pierce trade. Completely failed. They try these things and it just blows up in their face.
If you had looked at this situation, you rewind back to when we first saw the trade and you were to look into your crystal ball and find out that Kyrie Irving would have done all the things that he did to cause a controversy and the strain that he did on that team, and for the injuries to happen when they did, and for Kevin Durant's toe to be on the line for them to not advance, like so many like minute things and unexpected things came along the way. I'll actually give the Nets credit to be honest. Like the Paul Pierce thing, we got to say too that the Paul Pierce Kevin Garnett trade that was one of the dumbest moves of all time. But then they sold the team. It did change over, and they organically built a team. And I think this is what's interesting. They organically built a team with the All-Star D'Lo, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, and all of them. They built up these guys that were kind of cast aside, and found meaningful players on that team. And then they flipped it into stars. And that's what you do. I mean, they did grow organically. They rebuilt up their assets and took advantage of their market. But it's funny to me that they're literally back at square one. They're back where they began. But I think we could look at this from the Nets organization side of things. We could look at this from the Kevin Durant side of things. But I mean, Tammy, like you were talking about Mikal Bridges. I mean, now they got a lineup. They got Cam Thomas, who scored 134 points in his last 3 games. Mikal Bridges, who was Defensive Player of the Year runner-up. Cam Johnson, who's one of the premier 3-and-D players in the league. Ben Simmons. And then Nick Claxton, who's definitely going to be in the top 5 in Defensive Player of the Year voting this year as well. I mean, Tim, how do you feel about this young squad? Because like this is actually like going to be a very competitive, defensive-minded team first kind of team, and I think it'll actually be fun to watch this squad play.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about seeing the pieces fit. It's astonishing to see how far back Ben Simmons has come since when he last stepped on the floor with the 76ers. So if he can even come back to closely the person he was, well, then all of a sudden they have something decent right there. But honestly, I do give the Nets credit. If they were to flip things and get 2 stars, every team is going to do that 99% of the time. Unfortunately, Kyrie Irving is who he is, and Kevin Durant put all his chips in with someone like Kyrie, and it turned out not to work. But it makes me think, who's ever going to sign with Brooklyn again? It kind of turned real bad real quick. And the way that I think about it is that when they traded for Harden, they gave up tons of picks. I don't know how many it was, but there was pick swaps and there was picks. And essentially by trading Kevin Durant away, they received 4 picks back. So it's not like they doubled up on picks. They just received more picks back that they already pushed back out. And so I'm interested to see how the pieces fit. I mean, I'm excited for Cam Thomas. He seems electric. But at the same time, it starts with, is Ben Simmons going to take control and be like the player he was paid to be, or is he who he is? And right now, it looks like he is who he is. But my question mark is like, how are the Nets ever going to rebound from this? Like, how are they going to ever sign a prominent free agent? I don't see that really happening. So yeah, they have to start from square one, and it's just pretty funny that they shipped off 4 picks or however much it was to Houston. Now they received 4 picks back by trading away Kevin Durant. It just come full circle, and it's been entertaining to see, to say the least, as a Celtics fan. So,
well, let me tell you what, like let me say best case scenario. I'll try to be succinct with this. We don't have to talk too long on the Nets here, but they still have shooters and playmakers off the bench who they were not reluctant to trade. And I mean the picks that they traded, I think it's the next 5 years. The next 5 years of swaps and unprotected firsts. Is that what it is? Or 4? Somewhere 4 or 5. Doesn't matter. I mean, they are not recouping lottery level picks until maybe after if Durant's gone in 3 years in Phoenix. But looking at this lineup, I mean, Ben Simmons, you're putting the ball in his hands more to be a playmaker. He's got 3-point shooters around him. He's got a true 5. Claxton has proven that he can do that. And he's got shooters. So if this is a team that, the Otis is on him to be a playmaker, and you don't have anyone to dish it out to. I mean, Cam Thomas is going to take as many shots as he wants to, but Mikal Bridges is not a true playmaker. Cam Johnson is not a true playmaker. And you need someone to set up Claxton. That I think is going to be an issue between both of them. Like, they need someone to set the floor. And Dinwiddie definitely is going to be able to help with that. Dinwiddie's one of the better pick and roll players in this league, and I think he's going to mesh very well with Claxton. But that's the best case scenario. Like, Ben Simmons, steps up and figures things out with a very low pressure system. I mean, they're not going for a championship. Like, you just got to play your game, and this could be like one of the best defenses in basketball. I think Vaughn is going to coach his team up. They've been a top 5 defense since he started, and if they can embrace that identity, I think this is going to be a fun team. This is going to be a team that is actually not going to be fun to face in the play-in or the playoffs. And I think they could still hold on to a playoff run given this team. I don't think they're going to slide that far given how good they could be defensively. And they still have a coach who I think has shown that he can inspire greatness. Like, they clearly were a lot more on point, more competitive, more communicative on defense. I think the Nets maybe stick together here and continue to push. They're not going to stay in the top 4, but I think they'll be in the playoffs.
Yeah, another mistake that the Nets made. They had all these stars, and then they hired a rookie coach in Steve Nash, who was almost destined to fail because it just doesn't happen. No, there are literally, there's one example of a star becoming a good coach. That's Larry Bird. No other star player has ever really become has ever been a great coach, and they brought him in as a complete rookie, never coached in the NBA before, to coach these three stars. Obviously, it didn't help how little they were on the floor together, but that was another error by them. But I will say, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Ben Simmons now. Clearly, Ben is very, very fragile. He's now in a situation where there's literally no pressure. Can he get himself back to all-star level? Can he be the lead guy? Can he be the D'Angelo Russell of this era for the Brooklyn Nets? That'd be great to see. It'd be great if Ben can bounce back like that. Is it still there? Is it still there? That's the question. Maybe by the end of the season we'll have answered. Is that talent? Is that level of game still there with Ben Simmons? I think we'll have the answer to that question, I think, by the end of this season. But I do agree. I don't see them falling off a cliff or anything like that. So I definitely think they could still end up as a top 6 seed or at least in the play-in, and no one will want to face them. I think you're right there, Chris.
Where are we at to next? There's too much happened. This is probably the craziest trade deadline of all time. Quickly, what's our grade for the Bucks getting Crowder? That's an A+.
A+, really?
C what?
I was thinking C+, B-. I was around that mark.
Jae Crowder was the wing to get for a contending team, and everyone's like, well, how are we going to get him without a first-round pick or like a young talent or anything? And they got him for 5 second-rounders? And who cares about second-rounders? You buy those for cash every draft. It happens. That's an A. Maybe I won't get an A+. I'll give that an A.
What do you think, Tim?
Oh, it's an excellent trade given what Christian just said. 5 second-round picks, that's nothing. And so you do get someone who is a dog, a good defender, can shoot it well, and he's just kind of a winner. Wherever he goes, he plays well, and the teams play well, and he is somebody that you look to have on your team. And to get him for 5 seconds, in my opinion, is basically nothing, because how many second-round picks truly pan out? It happens ever so often, and so I wouldn't go as far to say it's an A+, but I'd hover around the B or B+, just given what they gave up for that type of player. And, that's going to just make the Bucks a little bit more tough to beat.
Yeah.
Something they needed, to be fair. It always felt like a natural home for Jae Crowder. It always felt like he was going to end up there. And if he's up there playing close to kind of like Bobby Portis level come playoff time, I'd say that's probably something that's in their mind, that sort of level. He can come in now as cover. Obviously, he hasn't played this year, so it might take him a little bit while to get up to the pace of things, but I think they'll be looking at him to be a real contributor for them by the time we're getting to the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, and just defensively, think about a lineup with Holiday, Middleton, Crowder, Giannis, and Brook Lopez. Have fun scoring on that. It's not going to happen.
That is true. That is true. A nice small move by Milwaukee, but one that could definitely have an impact come playoff time. So we'll stay out in the East. We'll go to the West later. We haven't really talked a lot of East. A surprising one was the 3-team trade between the Warriors, the Hawks, and the Pistons. James Wiseman is now a Piston. Sadiq Bey is now a Hawk. What do we think about this deal? What do we think about James Wiseman going to Detroit? I think is that a good move for him? Chris, I'm gonna let you answer on this because you're always a fan of James Wiseman. What do you think about this?
What? Don't put that on me. What do you mean, fan of James Wiseman? I've only ever said I thought he could have been great with Steph in Golden State, but I think I've lost that sentiment last year. But I'm confused as hell. I don't get it. I don't understand why the Pistons. I kind of understand from a business perspective what happened, because you have to look at this from the perspective that Sadiq Bey didn't generate a lot of interest in the trade market. I think his value is definitely overinflated, and in that scenario, it seems like he was losing traction with the coaching staff, in terms of his shot selection, in terms of, what he wanted to do with his game. But I think it's ironic that he ends up with the Hawks, where he's going to do even less. But I don't understand why you trade for Wiseman when you got Jalen Duren. You already got Isaiah Stewart. I mean, Marvin Bagley even has looked a little comfortable being a, 6-man type of big. So what are you going to do with Wiseman and Durant when you have two guys who are blue chip prospects who virtually are, there are some nuances between who they are as players, but they're virtually the same guy, or they haven't proven anything yet. Like I don't understand how you figure that out at all.
Twin Towers, Jared Allen, Mobley.
Yeah, that's worked out.
Would that work?
No,
Is that possible, you think?
I don't think so at all, because I don't. When we've talked about this with the Cavs, there's such a unique case because Jared Allen is uniquely skilled as a passer in the post. Mobley is also uniquely skilled as a passer. They move the ball quickly, and that has not been something that we've seen from Wiseman at all. And we haven't seen enough of Durant to even know what he is as a player. And I think this is a big thing in the league where there are situations. Look at Lauri Markkanen.
Mm-hmm.
This guy has just absolutely taken off, finding a role in a team where his value is known, his role is known, and he's at the position now where he's blossomed into that physically and like mentally as a player. You got to let players have the opportunity to do that. And when you put two players in the same kind of situation and there's uncertainty there, like how are they going to respond to that? Maybe like it's like in Denver when it was so obvious, like Jokic made it clear, like I am just leagues ahead of Nurkic. But if you don't have that, then both these guys continue to be stunted. Wiseman continues to feel not confident in his role. Maybe Durant the same, and maybe you ruin both these players. But I think that's a real danger you run. It's not like you just get all these assets and all these players and they just develop equally. Like you need to not only have the time on the floor, but you need to have the confidence that, you're wanted on a team, you're valued, and you actually have a direction as that team's player, because they both do the same thing.
Yeah, Tim, you feeling that way too?
It's certainly a head scratcher in my opinion, and it's back-to-back years where the Detroit Pistons trade for a big. Last year was Marvin Bagley, and this year it's James Wiseman. But you look at their roster, and all their players, I'm pretty sure, are lottery picks, and so they're super young. They obviously have plenty of potential, but to Christian's point, I'm a big fan of Jalen Duren. I don't think that they need to. I didn't think that they needed to go out and get another big. And honestly, in a league where a big player like Wiseman they're almost being phased out, almost where you need those stretch bigs that can really shoot the ball. And I understand that Wiseman is certainly young, but I just don't understand the philosophy for it. And a player like Sadiq Bey, maybe he was a little bit overinflated, but he goes with what the league was going with. A small forward, 3-point shooter, can play good defense, and they made a move that to me it just doesn't make any sense. But at the end of the day, Christian, you're right. It's gonna hinder their ability to excel and grow as individual players, and I can't picture them going in next year with all these bigs on their lineup. They're gonna have to make some more moves in the offseason and potentially flip that for some type of wing player or a guard or something along those lines, because they just got too much in that position, and it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one. It kind of feels like they were one of the teams that aren't really doing anything. They're not really doing anything this year. Cade Cunningham's obviously injured for the year. Warriors called them up to get them involved in this deal. Obviously, they used it to bring Gary Payton back to Golden State. They save a nice bit of money, I think, this year and then next year after getting off of Wiseman. So it was good for the Warriors. It kind of feels like they just kind of bullied Detroit into coming in on this deal and making it happen. It feels like that's what happened. But moving on there, then the Knicks, they bring in Josh Hart from Portland for Cam Reddish and a lottery protected first round pick, and pretty solid deal. I mean, I'm happy with it. I mean, they bring in great rebounding, great perimeter defense. He can play with pace. Not that the Knicks ever really play with pace, so we probably won't see too much of an impact from that. But defensively and the rebounding from the wing position, and if this guy can start knocking down his threes again, he could be a great addition as the Knicks look to make a run for the playoffs now in the second half of the year.
Well, let me ask you, like, what like area of need does he fill right now for the Knicks?
All around defense, I think. I think Tibbs wants to get this team back playing at a top 5, top 10 defensive level. They definitely are not doing it. Yeah,
Have they ever been there to get back?
I mean, the year they made the playoffs, that was built on Julius Randle and defense. This year they've been a lot lower than normal Tibbs teams are, and that's why they go out and get a guy like Josh Hart. They trade off of a guy Cam Reddish that clearly Tibbs had no interest in incorporating to the lineup. They are only giving away a pick that is lottery protected, so it's not too disappointing. So I think for the value there, I think it was a low key, really smart move from the Knicks, especially obviously defense and rebounding is his big thing. But if he can get back up to around like the 36, 37 mark on his threes as well, that'll be a plus for the Knicks.
Yeah. I think this is just more nepotism. There's more Jalen Brunson nepotism. That's what it is. But you'll love to see them get reunited. Those Vanderbilt teammates. Maybe Mikal Bridges will force his way from across the river.
Hey, I'd take that. give me Mikal Bridges in this Knicks lineup. I'd absolutely take that. All right, since we got Tim on, I guess we've got to talk about the
major move.
Yet another power move from the Boston Celtics. I said it when they signed Malcolm Brogdon. It just felt like they were so in control, and this was another one. Trade away Justin Jackson. Like, who the hell is Justin Jackson? And 2 seconds to get a stretch big who's shooting 39% from three. Just another great move from this Boston team. They are just so strong. The team is already so strong, and they're making these small additions. And they're just in that moment where everything just feels like it's working. And I mean, Tim, what do you think about this move? Just obviously nothing major, but they're adding something that they needed.
No, you're right. It's a solid move. They needed another depth big, and they got that. And this is someone who's not going to be playing a ton of minutes, but he's a stretch big. He's 6'11", so maybe he can give you 10 minutes a night on a good night, but he's your 9th or 10th man, but he fills a need for the role. So maybe we're not going to see as much as Luke Cornett in times when Luke Cornett comes out. It can be a mixture of Muscala and Cornett. But I think it's an absolutely solid move because it's exactly what they needed. And now they have an open roster spot for the buyout market, which I hope that they fill it in with a wing or a guard or someone along those lines that can just add a little bit more depth on the 2 or the 3. But, this was just a move that just made sense. And it's exactly what Brad Stevens has done ever since he took over as GM. And that's build around the 2 stars and bring out the most in the 2 stars. And the best way to do so is to have a big that can shoot the 3 sitting on the 3-point line. So when the defense caves in, kick it out to someone who's open. And you're right, Ronan, it's just been power move after power move. And they gave up nothing for a guy like this. And it's not going to put them over the top, but it's a good depth piece for someone like Justin Jackson, who barely played, and when he did play, would crank it off the backboard and look horrible at the same time. But it's a solid move from a depth perspective, and it's exactly what I was hoping they would do. And so, it's nothing major, but it's satisfying for the best team in the league.
Is Will Barton? Sorry, one sec, Chris. Is Will Barton a guy that you'd like to see them fill? He's being bought out by the Wizards. He's a guy you can see in Boston.
Absolutely, that's my number 1 pick right there. I like Danny Green. I like Terrence Ross if he's bought out from Orlando. Those are my top 3 picks for filling in a good depth piece. But yeah, when I saw the news that Will Barton and Washington are looking towards a buyout, that's just the best fit. And I know that Celtics have been linked to this guy for quite some time.
Sorry, I'm just laughing that we're just handing out little awards for Mike Muscala trades. Yay!
Hey, but when you're 39 and 16, you get a guy like that. That's all you can ask for. You didn't touch the core. You didn't touch any of the key bench pieces, and you added someone that they needed. So
I would have been happy with that. I would have been
just jealous that the Boston Celtics actually made a trade. He didn't know much about that.
I would have traded for Justin Jackson for nothing, just to see we made a trade. But yeah, I do like that idea. Will Barton would be a nice little buyout. Maybe Russell Westbrook. But that's coming soon. We'll have to talk about that some other time. Are you staying in the East here?
Yeah, we'll finish out the East here quickly. Obviously, Thybulle is now over in Portland. Matisse Thybulle, he's left the 76ers. Obviously, his minutes were completely shot this year because the end of the day, he just could not produce anything offensively. The 76ers have added Jalen McDaniels, maybe not as good a defender as Matisse Thybulle, but a guy who can offer them more offensively, and maybe he can contribute more minutes as part of this rotation. So I think kind of a strange move for Portland. Obviously, they wanted to get more defense in after giving up Josh Hart, but I think it's a smart move for the 76ers to move off a piece that wasn't really part of their plans, and maybe adding a guy that can offer them that bit more.
Yeah, I mean certainly a more, maybe not a he's not a great shooter by any means, but definitely more willing shooter. But just to switch things out, I just think he didn't look comfortable there. I think great for, hopefully he finds a role in Portland. Well, I don't know if we're gonna talk about Portland now, but I mean I don't know what they're doing.
We'll get there,
yeah, but yeah, we'll see what ends up happening for them, because I did like Josh Hart out there.
And what about Jakob Poeltl? He's in Toronto now. They only gave up Kem Birch, a first and 2 seconds. A strange move to see him going to Toronto. Why are they went from being touted as maybe the biggest sellers of the trade deadline to being the guys that made one addition, adding another big guy, and then not selling anyone. What happened there? That was weird.
I think it's a good move. I think that was smart for them to shore up what they needed. They needed a rim protector. They needed a true center with size. They got that, and a guy that is very familiar with the system. And interesting to see him reunited with Siakam. And I think, like we talked about with the Raptors before, they're going to be patient. They have very easy strength of schedule when they had one of the hardest ones in the first half of the season. And I think for anyone who's been able to watch on the season, we know they've been inconsistent, but having size could really change things for them, and give them the opportunity to play a little bit differently. And they haven't had the opportunity to play with size on the court, and Poeltl gives an opportunity to see that.
Yeah. Tim, you thinking that's a smart move? Is that a good place for Poeltl?
It's an interesting place, but to your point, yeah, they went from potentially selling off Siakam and Fred VanVleet Jr. to all of a sudden adding Poeltl, and so I do think it is going to be good for their starting lineup. Now Siakam can go back to being the 4 and playing alongside a big number 5, and so they're interesting. I don't think it really puts them over the needle, but certainly I wouldn't want to see them in the first round. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Final trade for the Eastern Conference. Mason Plumlee is gone over to the Clippers for Reggie Jackson.
Whoa,
that was a strange one. That was a real odd one. Now it seems Reggie Jackson's going to be bought out by the Hornets as well. So that's another guy who's going to be available in the buyout market. Small move. Is it a bit of a weird one?
I mean, maybe they need to clear space. I can't lie to you. I've not done my extensive homework on the Hornets, but the thing is, they have a lot of young bigs, and they haven't, made a name for themselves there. Similar problem to what the Pistons are going to deal with, but clearing the way to have their bigs get on the floor and get some minutes could be important. But down year for Reggie Jackson. Tough to see him after the run he had a few years ago with the Clippers. We'll see where he goes, but yeah, tough year for him.
Yeah, it's been rough. Obviously, he was like they're almost their star guy with obviously Kawhi being out for the full year and George being in and out of the team last year. I mean, Reggie Jackson was the dude. It's a shame it's had to go this way now, when maybe they could have looked at trading him maybe in the offseason, and they would have got a very good price. But let's move over to the West. Los Angeles Lakers surprisingly had a really, really good trade deadline without doing anything too major. Obviously, they traded off Russell Westbrook, but I think they've definitely improved their team, and it would give you that little bit more confidence of them being able to make enough of a run to maybe get close to the playoffs, but almost definitely get into the play-in, where I wasn't really feeling that way watching them over the last few weeks.
I'm hesitantly positive. Tim, are you feeling positive about that? I'm not sure how I feel yet. It'll take a little bit of time for me.
Yeah, they absolutely needed to do something, and they got rid of Westbrook, which was their biggest piece that they needed to get rid of, and they added shooting around LeBron, which is what you need to do. And someone like Beasley, he needs to come up big.
Mhm.
That's my number one person that I'm circling at all those guys that came in is like if he can produce, then all of a sudden he's paved himself into a nice role playing alongside Anthony Davis and LeBron James. But maybe with the presence of Russell Westbrook being off the team could like enlighten them to a sense. But they needed to do something. I don't think it's going to do anything for them in the Western Conference because the Western Conference got immediately much better. And so whatever the Lakers could have done wasn't even going to come close to what Dallas or Phoenix could do. And so it's a nice trade. It's nice moves. It's good to see, but it's not going to do anything for them in come playoff time.
Yeah, I guess that's how I see it too. Because like there's a lot of positives I could say about it. Like number one, the shooting that's been the biggest issue. Like D'Lo and Beasley spacing the floor alongside LeBron James and AD. That's a massive upgrade. Massive upgrade. They're not the most elite shooters you could have gotten, but they're willing shooters and they're good shooters. They will take contested shots, and that's not something that you had on this roster before the deadline. I think I'm still just worried about the defense, even though you get Vanderbilt. I think Vando is such an underrated defender, and he's going to just absolutely blow up. Being in LA, having the spotlight, and seeing the amount of effort that he puts out there, like he's going to have Alex Caruso level type of fandom out in LA because he just does all the little things. He's constantly like flying around the floor. But having a true wing defender is something that I think they really needed. I don't know how they do that in the deadline. Obviously, you don't grade someone based on what they didn't do necessarily, because I think they did a lot to get better. But it is hard to grade this out while looking at what the rest of the West has done and still feel like, they made it to a championship level team. I will say though that, getting Bamba in there, who I still think has not been given enough run and enough consistency maybe to demonstrate that he is worthy of more minutes. That's just been tough for him there in Orlando. And hey, there's a great track record of having bigs come from Orlando to LA, right? Like history repeats itself. But yeah. I'm still not sure about the wing defense. That's a big concern for me. But maybe AD, Bamba, and Vanderbilt, like they're able to correct whatever issues they're going to have on the perimeter, because Beasley's not a good defender, D'Lo's not a good defender, Schroeder's not a great defender, and we already know that Rui Hachimura is not a true wing defender. So the bigs are going to have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm looking at it and like my heart says they've done really well here. They actually look like they could go on enough of a run to actually get into the playoffs now. But in my head, I'm like, there's just no saving this Lakers team, and unfortunately, it's gonna be disappointing yet again. But they made good additions. They filled some gaps that needed to be done. This roster is now better than the one they had available to them before today, which is something that I didn't think they were going to be able to do, especially after missing out on Kyrie. But I'm really interested to see if Mo Bamba starts for this team. I mean, the word has always been that AD wants to play the 4. He doesn't want to play the 5. When Mo Bamba started, he averaged 11 points, eight boards, 2 blocks, shot 38% from 3. You get AD happier. You fill Mo Bamba in as your starter. You got a lot of good size there. Then you got LeBron, probably Schroeder and D'Lo. Then you got the likes of Beasley and Vanderbilt coming in off the bench. I mean, that's a much better roster. And if AD can stay healthy, don't know what the hell was up with him on whatever day it was, Tuesday. I mean, he doesn't even react when LeBron breaks the record.
Yeah, I don't know what that was about. That was weird.
I want to say weird. He's pissed off. I wanted to be like, cut him some slack and be like, he's just pissed off because they're losing. But he was absolutely horrendous for the entire game. Like, that's like one of the worst games I've seen Anthony Davis play all season. So there was definitely something going on there. I don't know if that's a mental side of thing. Was it a bit of jealousy, just angry at the way they're winning? But it was very, very weird. they're in a better position now. Let's see if they can go on a run, because they are under pressure, and it's slowly getting to that time where you're thinking, if they don't go on a at least like a 4 or 5 game winning streak soon, they're not going to be able to make the playoffs, and they really kind of have to with the move that they make.
Yeah, I will say that on the positive end of things, how many games have we seen come down to just the Lakers shooting themselves in the foot and like losing by either bad luck or just, lapses, or just not having enough shooting, just like one score games, like overtime games that shouldn't have been there, while LeBron's having a crazy night. So maybe it just takes, addition by subtraction. You don't have Russ there, that Tim said enlightenment, that maybe that'll enlighten this team, and will just not having him there. But shout out to Kyle for being Russ's number one fan and defending him. Maybe Russ did get too much hate there. Hopefully he's on to a new chapter. But
yeah, this is at least running now, is he?
Yeah, I don't know how we're gonna give it to him now. But yeah, if LeBron's gonna go down this season and he's going to do something major, he's going to win a championship, doing it with a team like this that's how much more so for his legacy. This isn't, besides AD, this is not a star-studded team. This is a team of solid players that kind of fits him, but we'll see.
Yeah. So we're gonna wait and see now. Wait and see how this team ebbs and flows now, and in the coming weeks. Another part of that trade were the Timberwolves. They are no longer with D'Lo now. They've got Mike Conley in there. They also added Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Let's see if he can add some minutes there. But the addition of Mike Conley is a real interesting one. Can he be more of the type of point guard that Anthony Edwards needs for the Timberwolves to flourish?
Tim, I'll let you take that.
Well, I certainly hope so, but he is so far past his prime. I don't know if you're going to get much out of him, but, when Karl Anthony Towns comes back, it's an interesting team. I've always thought the TWolves were an interesting team, but, much like the Lakers, they're not going to do much in the playoffs time just because of, the powerhouses in the West got a lot more heavy. And, for the T-Wolves, you add someone like Mike Conley, that doesn't move the needle. Maybe it makes their team a little bit better by maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 wins. But I don't really know if it's if that's something that Anthony Edwards would need. But it doesn't feel like it's something that's gonna push them over the edge.
Yeah, I'm not hugely into it because, well, I think 2 things. One is sunk cost is a major issue in making a lot of these decisions, especially when it comes to GMs and GMs that need to continue narratives to keep their jobs and not look like they're floundering. And case in point, Chicago Bulls, who are undoubtedly going to talk about continuity and blah blah blah. But I think the Timberwolves recognize that there's a serious issue with how they're constructed, and recognize the decline of Gobert's play, and through that recognize that he played a lot better with Conley. He played a lot better with a more heady point guard who's able to play make a lot better for a rolling big. We thought that we'd get a little bit more of that from D'Lo, but that has not come about, and there's little reasons for that. Very, very little reasons for that. And I think that's more of an indictment on Gobert and D'Lo to not figure it out. But I don't think Conley is there to replace D'Lo's production, but to amplify what you get out of Edwards and Gobert. And if we're answering that question alone, I think he's going to set the table better. He's more stable. You know what you're going to get out of him. You're not expecting him to score in bunches. You're expecting him to, steady the defense and being a great point of attack defender. He's still a great defender, and he's going to steady the offense by being a more responsible playmaker. He's not going to be as flashy as D'Lo, but I think he's gonna stabilize what they do there. And at times, it just felt too hectic throughout this season with D'Lo and Anthony Edwards. You didn't always get the responsible playmaking out of D'Lo, but that's also just not who he is. So it's good that they recognize that they weren't in the place they want to be, but it's tough when you're looking back at the fact that they recruited D'Lo so heavily. He's Cat's good friend, and this was supposed to be this great combination of offensive talent, and he was a big picture of that. And I think the big picture is tough, but you got to make changes when you're in the West, and you have to figure out what you're going to do when you have a talent like Edwards and you went all in with Gobert.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was also the element of a move, like we discussed it last week when we talked about the Timberwolves. Russell was slowly feeling like he wasn't going to be the point guard for this team when they were really going and trying to challenge, and it was kind of the idea of getting some value for him now. Getting some value for him now. They traded off him. They got a guy back that has shown that he knows how to play with Gobert. He's going to be a lot more solid defensively, and that's going to help being alongside Anthony Edwards. So I think it's a smart move from the Timberwolves. How much it changes things for them, we'll have to wait and see, but a smart move for them. I don't think we need to discuss the Jazz, really. They were also part of that trade. They got Russ, JTA, Damian Jones. They got a top 4 protected pick. Good on the Lakers, in fairness, for getting that element in. I thought it would have to be an unprotected pick, but they did
Check
well
this
to get
out.
that in.
I think the protection is if it doesn't convey, it immediately conveys into a second round pick. That's a crazy protection.
I think we were even 2 second round picks or something like that. Yeah.
So they got one shot.
Yeah, it was a very, very smart move. That was the 2027 pick as well, wasn't it? Yeah. So that's a really good work from the Lakers, but obviously Jazz, they don't really come into the equation this too much. They're probably going to buy out Russ, and then he's going to be on the open market, and the Jazz are where they're at. So moving on from there. Eric Gordon to the Clippers. We've been talking about it for what, like 2-3 years now. When's Eric Gordon gonna get out of Houston? Who's he gonna go to? He is headed to the Clippers. Luke Kennard is headed to Memphis. Danny Green and John Wall are back. Well, Danny Green for the first time. John Wall is now back in Houston after being bought out by them. Probably going to be bought out again. But what do we like to fit Eric Gordon in Los Angeles? Tim, what do you think about Eric Gordon being added to this Clippers unit?
Well, anytime you can get a wing 3-point shooter is going to be good, especially playing alongside Kawhi and Paul George. That's a great type of player that you need. And so it's a minor move, but at the end of the day, I think that's a winning player and somebody that can excel a team and help them thrive a little bit better. And so I like it from the standpoint of just playing alongside those two players. I think, adding somebody that can just spot up and shoot is exactly what you need. And he's a great player in that sense. And so I like that move. It's a small move, but at the end of the day, Luke Kennard, he didn't really do much for me with that team. He shined in some spots, but also he was behind the scenes in a lot of it. So bringing in Eric Gordon is a good move for LA.
I like the thought of Luke Kennard in Memphis, though. Not to jump off the Clippers. I mean, end of the day, you get more depth on this team. We thought they'd be like the deepest team in the league beginning of the season, and a lot of this hasn't panned out. Bones Highland, though, I will mention that. Like, Bones, maybe he gets an opportunity here. We'll see now that you don't have John Wall on the team. Bones might have an opportunity to, maybe. I think if you're comparing him and Terrence Mann, I would love to see Bones sneak his way into the starting lineup. You hide him when you got Paul George and Kawhi there. A lot more perimeter defense to help out with some of the lapses that he has on that end. But Eric Gordon, and you're compiling a deep team that when you're playing in the playoffs, you got guys like that. They know how to succeed. They know how to fight through a series. Eric Gordon's been there time in, time out, and back in the Clippers uniform. You love to see it. But let's talk Grizzlies. I think that's a very low-key move. A lot of people, that is what Luke Kennard was. Like, he didn't turn into this, he didn't have the moment that like a Joe Harris had. He didn't have a moment that like a Seth Curry had. He didn't have those like elite shooter moments. He didn't turn into their JJ Redick. But he's quietly been like one of the best 3-point shooters in the league, shooting 44% from 3 this year. And that's exactly what the Grizzlies need. And the Grizzlies are winning games, just dominating in the paint on both ends of the floor. Number 1 in points in the paint on the offense, and number 4 in opponents' points in the paint. But they're still in the bottom third in threes. They don't really have guys who are willing to gun from there. They only have Bane. Sometimes you got Tyus Jones. He has games like that, but you surround John Morant with Luke Kennard and Bane. I mean, I think it's going to open a lot of things up. Actually, once you get both of those guys on the court, that could be a really helpful move for a team who doesn't have enough spacing on the floor sometimes.
Yeah, it was smart of them to get involved in this deal. I think that's a really, like a lot of them on trade deadline. It was a low key, smart move that gives them something that they didn't have before. Memphis, they've obviously been floundering just a little bit of late, ever since Ja Morant started talking them up and how much they liked it in the West and all that. It's kind of been a bit all over the place. It's funny how things work out like that. But on the Bones Highland trade, that just seems like a terrible move for Denver, for 2 second-round picks to give up Bones Highland. I don't understand that really at all. I know he hasn't been obviously what they were expecting this year, but to give him up with that low of a return, that felt like a really bad move from a Nuggets standpoint.
He's been fine this year. Like he's had his moments. He's continued to show like his prowess as a creator. He's a very, very creative scorer, but defensively it's not there. And if you're going to be complaining about minutes on a team that has championship aspirations and you're a young guy, I think there are things that go into making these decisions that go beyond just, what someone provides theoretically on the court or in the future. Cause they're trying to make a push here. And I think that matters.
Well, I got a hot take. I think Denver Nuggets are the biggest losers in this trade deadline. That's a fact. Everyone in the in the West got better, and they shipped off Bones Highland, so they essentially almost got worse. I mean,
I don't know. They got Thomas Bryant.
Yeah. See, that doesn't do anything for me. And so I think that, Denver, they were poised. They're the best team in the West. They have been all year. And, for the longest time in the power rankings, it was, Denver number 1, Boston number 1, flip-flopping 1 and 2. And, I would say that they have to be the biggest losers of the trade deadline because everyone in the East got a lot better. That gap is closed. And for some reason, it doesn't make any sense, Ronan. Yeah, sending off Bones Highland for 2 second rounds just doesn't add up. And, I know he's not like this like star caliber player, but he's somebody that can go and score in volumes, and you need that in this league. And so I don't understand it. To me, they're the biggest losers of the trade deadline.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather give more minutes to Ish Smith, to be honest. If we're talking a playoff scenario, like honestly, maybe that's great. Ish Smith is going to take care of the basketball. He's pesky on defense. He's not a defensive stopper, but he's going to know his role. I mean, that's a veteran guy that you give minutes to, and then you avoid the awkwardness of, having Bones complaining. I mean, especially when you're approaching a playoff situation and you need to get stops and you got to play, 19 minutes of Bones Highland. If you're relying on him to make smart plays, it's like a game 6. Like that's a tough scenario to be in. And if it's already starting to get toxic, I don't know if he became a problem, but it seems like that clearly was the strain there, that he wanted more minutes and he wanted more of a role. And that's just not what this team was willing to do. But Thomas Bryant he had some moments with the Lakers and that they really needed a big off the bench. I don't think they lost too bad here. Bryant's not going to really make massive changes, but it was tough to see games where you have Jokic come off the bench or go to the bench, and then you have Zeke Naji, who's really not a true big, come in and try to defend opposing centers. At least they have the size there now that they needed.
Yeah, maybe that's probably fair, but I still think the Bones deal that kind of edges him out. But if you really wanted to say it, fine, Chris, the Chicago Bulls are the biggest loser of the trade deadline by doing nothing. Let's put it that way. But then Gary Payton II is back in Golden State. It's really funny that it's worked out like that, because only like 2 weeks ago I randomly saw a video on TikTok. I guess some Warriors fan had put it up of like highlights of Gary Payton with a few like high flying dunks and that. And they're like, God, I missed this guy. Now he's back in San Francisco, and it's just a good addition for the Warriors. Obviously, they gave up on Wiseman to get him back, but I was surprised when he wasn't re-signed by the Golden State Warriors. I think he was a really important player for them on their title run last year, and I think they've done well to get him back in the team.
Yeah, nobody's talking about the fact that they're paying more money now than they would have if they had just re-signed him and then just dumped Wiseman somehow.
Yeah, that's true. But I think
But
they're
not
saving
to
more
rain
money
on your
off
little
Wiseman.
return parade.
Yeah, they are saving more money though, because I think with the luxury tax now, I think they're saving 7 million now for the rest of the year after getting rid of Wiseman. They're going to save 30 million then the following year. So I think it works out the money wise. I think they are in a good place. I think I saw that. So a good move from them. Obviously, the Warriors have been up and down all year. Guys have been in and out of the team. Curry's been had those injury spells. It's going to be interesting now to see if they can make a run for the rest of the year. But the final few little trades that went down in the West, obviously Bryant to Denver.
A plus.
Hey, you're going A plus. You like that one. What about Dario Saric to OKC? That was a weird one. Darius Basley in a second rounder going to the Suns.
C plus, fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then what about Josh Richardson to the Pels? What do you think about that one?
That one's good. Like Pels, I think Pels need more consistent defense. They need more 3-point shooting. I'll give that's a B plus. They haven't succeeded to the point where we thought they would at this point, but wing defense and 3-point shooting. Josh Richardson has proven to be a more consistent 3-point shooter this season. So I like that for them. That's a B plus.
What are you thinking, Tim?
Well, anytime you can add someone like that off the bench, it's good. And that Pelicans team, they could obviously use some depth on the bench. And so having a 3-point defensive player coming off of the bench is going to be solid for them overall. So I'd say a B or B plus is accurate.
I thought
Yeah.
Tim would have some Josh Richardson PTSD, but you've moved past it.
I would take him back in a heartbeat. He'd be the perfect Will Barton type player to come in to fill the roster spot. But that's just me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's wrapped up trade deadline. It's been a wild one. So many moves. We probably even forgot someone who still talked about so many, but
Yeah, we're not going to roast the Blazers for fumbling whatever this deadline was, but we'll
I
leave
don't
them
know
alone,
what
I
I don't
guess.
know what the Blazers are doing. We'll talk about them more possibly on the next episode. But still, things to happen. The buyout market, they're gonna look like it's gonna have John Wall, Patrick Beverley, Russell Westbrook, Reggie Jackson, Will Barton, probably a few more guys that are gonna be out there. So there's still moves to be made by certain teams. We still have to see what happens, but the West has got a whole lot stronger. KD is a Phoenix Sun. Kyrie is with the Dallas Mavericks. The Lakers have a more well-rounded team. The Chicago Bulls are the exact same. But
Continuity.
that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for sticking with us. My thanks to Chris for joining me. Tim, always great to have you on. We appreciate you joining us. And remember, guys, you like what you're hearing, wherever you're getting your podcasts, like, subscribe, comment, give us a follow. Check us out on social media. We are everywhere at Coast to Coast NBA. And remember, take every shot and love every moment.
Peace.
Go Celtics.